How does then, in the nicest way, an average guy train for one of the hardest races on planet Earth? What did that look like? Welcome, everyone, to the main journey, a way for you to join me on a learning journey through life. My name is Samuel Main, and today we welcome Freddie Bennett to the show. Freddie is a father, a Guinness World Record holder, a podcast host, a CEO of Conquer Group, and a best-selling author. Freddie helps business owners enjoy more time, more money, and more freedom by discovering and extracting hidden profits in their company. On top of this, Freddie is a very established runner, having recently completed a 50-kilometer race in just over 4 hours, completed the Marathon des Sables, which is a 250-kilometer race across the desert, completed Ironmans, multiple marathons, and so much more. Welcome, Freddie, and thank you for joining me on the show.
Thank you so much, Samuel. I am very, very excited about this podcast. It's a pleasure to be here.
Great to connect, my friend. Freddie, I'd love to kick this off with actually asking you a question about your previous races. So when you reflect upon all of your races and challenges that you have completed, what race are you most proud of?
It's a great question, and I love it the way we're going deep in there straight away. It's got to be the way, hasn't it? So my proudest race has got to be the Marathon des Sables, as you said, 250 kilometers across the Sahara Desert. So it's otherwise known as the world's toughest foot race. Like, imagine running 7 marathons in 6 days, carrying all your food, all your equipment, all your spare pants on your back, basically in the most inhospitable environment in the world, where everything's trying to kill you, which would be on any day that would be tough, but also I'm not a runner. That's the crazy thing. And I know when people think about running, we've had things like the London Marathon recently before this podcast was recorded, and you hear runner, you get a certain idea and perception in your head. You hear ultra marathon runner, and you're like, right, that's like lycra overload, running chat overload. But when I signed up for this, the world's toughest foot race, at that time, I couldn't run around the block. I lived mainly on a Marlboro based diet, drinking every night, terrible habits, terrible exercise. I was unfit, I was overweight, I was all these things that a runner should not be. But I went from couch to world's toughest race in 18 months, and that, for me, that was the big race. That was the turning point. That was the moment when I thought, actually, I don't have to be less than I thought I could be. I don't have to tolerate this life that's less than I deserve. So that's why I decided to take a big step forward and really do some bold things with my life.
Love it. So what was the motivation to sign up for one of the most challenging races that you can do?
It's a great question. I was in my 30s, or put it this way, I used to work at a corporate job in London. Like, I was your stereotypical guy, worked for a global corporate company, mid-manager. I partied hard in my 20s, got married when I was 30, had the couple of kids. I was in this place in my life where I was kind of comfortable. Like, I had the nice watch, the nice car. We had a couple of nice holidays every year. Couple of kids. On the outside, you'd look at me and my life and be like, oh yeah, that guy's doing pretty well. On the inside, my life was falling apart. I was stressed, I was depressed, I was unhappy, I was unfulfilled, I felt like an imposter. Because of that, I was drinking too much, I was partying too hard, my diet was shit, I was doing no exercise. Because of that, my mental health was falling apart, and I was barely keeping it together. And I was doing things that we all know, my mental health was terrible. So I'd drink more, and then I'd feel bad. So I'd party more and I'd work less. And I always made these promises to change my life and do all these things that I wanted to do, but it was always like after the next project, after the next birthday, after the next house, after the next car. One day I'll do all these things, but really, I was going into a deeper and deeper spiral. Then one day I was at work, kind of, this doesn't really work on a podcast, but I was kind of there, like, with your chin sort of slumped in your hand, like lying almost vertically in your chair, so almost horizontally in your chair, kind of tapping away on a spreadsheet, just bitching about, oh, I hate this, oh, my life's crap. And then the phone rang, and it was saying that my dad was in hospital, and it didn't look good. So I had to literally walk out of work with nothing but my suit and my laptop bag, jump in a car, drive for a couple of hours to where he was. And yeah, to cut a long story short, I had one of those days that you always kind of see on movies, when my lunchtime was normal. By dinner time, I watched my dad die. And, he was 74. I must have been, what, 30, 34, I would have been. And then it's supposed to be, again, like you see on the movies, where I should have walked out of the hospital and the sunlight shone on me, and I would have been like, the angels would have gone like, oh, and like, I'd go, oh, this is it. I need to change my life. The truth was, I partied harder. I acted like more of a dick. I was more stupid, more reckless than ever. But then 6 months after I'd buried him, that's when I did wake up one morning, and it was like a Thursday, like a Thursday morning. I'd partied too hard the night before on a work night, overslept, clearly wasn't going to go into work that morning. And I looked at myself in the mirror, and I just thought, your life wasn't supposed to turn out like this. Like Freddie, what happened to your hopes and your dreams? What happened to the guy that you always meant to be? Because you're not being that guy. And when I realized that, then I thought something has to change. And I thought I need to do something big and bold to make myself change. Because if I just make these empty promises about, I'm going to try and drink a bit less, or I'm going to try and get a bit fitter, I just break those promises. So I'd had my eye on this race for years. I was the guy that would bore you in the pub, like, I'm going to do that race one day. Oh yeah, you watch me. I'm going to do it. Yeah, I had the t-shirt, I had the book, I had everything apart from the actual race medal. And that's what I thought, what, if I'm going to prove to myself and to my kids that I can be this person I think I'm capable of being, I need to start taking some bold action. So I took my credit card out, signed up for the race there and then, went home, told my wife. She started crying. Then she said, "You're gonna die," and then I had to start on this journey of trying to be this person and trying to back up, for once in my life, actually back up my words and my promises with action.
Man, it's such a touching, incredible story. I'm sorry you had to go through that, but it's obviously also now led you to be this person that you are today. So I'm stoked, because this person sitting across from me sounds very different to the person back then. There may be some people that listen to this that may be in that spiral, in that downward spiral. Would you have any advice for them if they need to make a significant change to the path that they're on right now?
I mean, yeah, I can certainly offer my insights, because it's, having been there, there were times like when it was really dark for me. I'm talking like Samaritans on speed dial, for people out in the UK, the suicide hotline on speed dial. That's how bad it was. I was on my way to either getting fired, getting in prison, or getting in hospital, or all three. But the crazy thing that people don't talk about is, we all know the things about men and mental health, and everyone's like, talk to someone, put your hand up, all these things, which I did. But here's what really killed me. I put my hand up. I got the therapy. I read I listened to the podcasts by Robbins. I read the books by Goggins. I tried to feel the fear and do it anyway. I even practiced a subtle art of not giving a fuck, but nothing worked.
Yeah.
The therapist was good, but it felt like, well, I'd speak to them and it'd be great, and then I'd go back into the real world and my life would be a disaster. With all the self-help stuff, I found it difficult when the billionaire Tony Robbins was telling me to not worry about money. I found it difficult when ex-Navy SEAL David Goggins was telling me to be mentally tough, because I was like, I'm not billionaire Tony Robbins. I'm not ex-Navy SEAL David Goggins. I'm this guy who's got a stressful job, whose life's falling apart, and I'm barely trying to keep my shit together every day. And there wasn't anything out there for me. And so for myself, I spent a lot of time on coaching and therapy and a lot of money as well. And some of it worked. But for me, a big shift for me was when I started actually keeping promises to myself. And these can start with small promises, like, I'm not always one for going big on the whole like journaling and gratitude planning and everything else, but just to set myself some really small goals and then to start ticking them off was a massive confidence boost. Because in the past I've been like how many other blokes are, and goal setting. I'm like, right, I'm going to write a book this week, and I'm going to do that, and I'm going to do 10 social media posts, and nothing would ever happen. I'd be going like, shit, it's too much, and I just feel like a failure. So starting off with those small goals, I always had this thing: small steps, massive outcomes, and so I'd set myself, these massive outcomes of running the world's toughest foot race, but I'd have to take small steps. Things like the world record, that was small steps as well. Because I think there's sometimes in life when that's all we can do. We can just try and take one step forward, no matter how small, just to give ourselves some evidence that we are actually going somewhere. And a lot of faith as well. I don't mean that necessarily in the religious sense, but I think I had this thing where I'd sit in my car in the rain and try and put motivational videos on YouTube on my phone, which would be pretty hit and miss. But especially when like an advert comes up halfway through and you're like, oh shit, doesn't help. Someone said, whoever you believe in, no matter, even if you don't believe anything, the fact that we're still alive means that whoever, we've still got unfinished business. Basically, we've still got things to achieve. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here. And I was like, I knew I wasn't going to make a very permanent solution to a temporary problem. So I had to hold the faith that if my dad had to die, then that had to be for a reason. If I was getting in trouble at work, I got in a lot of trouble at work, that had to be for a reason. And the fact that I still was here, I still had breath in my lungs. I said to myself, if I'm still breathing, I'm still winning. And if I can keep on doing that, then it's got to be for a reason and a purpose.
Love that. Love that you recognize it almost as a signal, as a trigger. But I also loved what you said about how the billionaires giving financial advice and the different situations. That was super interesting. I love these statements: small steps, massive outcomes. It's incredibly powerful. So how does then, in the nicest way, an average guy train for one of the hardest races on planet Earth? What did that look like?
It looked like a lot of fear and a lot of pain. And I've got a bit of I don't have a running background. I tried the London Marathon back in 2012. So like 5 years before I signed up for this race. And I took the piss out of the training. I think I did some runs. I took the whole it's all about the mindset and it's all about your mentality side of it. And I was like, oh, it's okay. It's just a mental thing, really. My mindset's fine. So I think a couple of times I literally took a cigarette out on a run with me to fire myself up halfway around. I told myself. So I got to the London Marathon 2012. Absolute disaster. Everyone's like, oh, the London Marathon, darling, it's wonderful, it's the best day, it's the atmosphere, darling, oh, it's London. Worst bloody day of my life. I cried, I got injured, I think I pooed my pants near the end, and it was just like a 6-hour pain train. So I went from that, and that's when my wife was like, do you not remember the London Marathon, the infamous day that our whole family talks about when you thought you were going to die, and now you've signed up to do 7 marathons back to back over 6 days? But how did I start training? I literally had to start running around the block, and that's how I did it. 250-kilometer ultra marathon, I had to start by running a kilometer, and it's not the glamorous way of doing it, but it's as they say. You run a kilometer and then you try and do 2 kilometers. And then I started doing park runs, and then I did a 10K, and I had to literally build myself up and up and up. And And then you start to bring all of the, there's the running side of it. So I got up to, I was running like almost 100 kilometers a week I'd be running. And you think, I was living in Liverpool at the time, and Liverpool's an interesting place, but it ain't the Sahara Desert. So like a January Liverpool morning that's where I'm slipping on frost compared to the Sahara Desert is difficult. But then there's also the mental side of it. And I don't mean the kind of like the David Goggins, strength and adversity sort of stuff. I actually mean like the planning and the preparation. Because if you think
considerable,
of all the food that you have to eat normally in 7 days, because I was burning 10,000 calories a day in the desert, I was only able to carry about 2,500 calories. And, my backpack, it weighed, what was it? It weighed 8 kilos. So you think an 8-kilo backpack, all of your food, your sleeping bag, your pillow, your venom pump, which is something you never thought you'd be packing on your holidays, with the snakes and the spiders, your first aid kit, all those things you have to plan and prepare for. And because it's a self-sufficient race, it's not like do a marathon, chill out in a hotel with a gin and tonic, get up the next morning, do another marathon. You're literally sleeping in the dirt. So that's, like I'm short-sighted. I wear contact lenses. How do you do your contact lenses in the desert with no mirror, no sink, even these little things? And that's what I found undid like a lot of competitors. Like if your shoelace breaks, what do you do? If your blisters come up, what do you do? If like all these things, there's no one, there's medics to pull you out of there. And that's why a lot of life, like I say, it's glamorous to talk about the Rocky montage of the training and everything else, but a lot of it, and then that's what I find in business as well, it's about the details and the preparation and the visualization. If I get stung by a scorpion, what am I going to do? If I get a hole in a water bottle, what do I do? I can't put my hand up and say, sorry, guys, have you got another one? Because then I'll be out of the race. So all these small details, you have to plan and prepare for. And yeah, like imagine the worst thing is like imagine running a marathon in the Sahara Desert and you can't even change your underwear or have a shower. And then you have to get up the next day. And so that's my one luxury. I think I'd done 4 marathons in 4 days through that heat and that sand and that sweat and that salt, and then changing my pants was the best. But yeah, like a box fresh pair of runner's underwear. Like, oh, that was just the best feeling ever.
amazing! What an incredible accomplishment, and I think it also, there's so many then skills. I look at that, so many skills that can carry over into normal life. That level of preparation, planning, and just detail, and also the resilience to go through it. Of course, the physical side, but also the mental side is incredible. And I suppose that's why it's one of the most challenging races that you can do. It's amazing. So I know that you have the Guinness World Record too. I'm going to assume you knew that this was coming. Was the Guinness World Record before or after the
it was after the desert, and that was a funny one. So yeah, I guess I hold the Guinness World Records. I am officially the fastest fisherman on the planet, which means the fastest marathon dressed as a fisherman. And I thought this was going to be like just chill out, sort of the fly. I'm not a fisherman, ironically. It's like the fish. They got the hat with the sort of the feathers in and the waistcoat, and that's quite nice, chilled out sort of look. I can do that. Because by that time, I was not bad at running because I've been practicing it. And so I'd come back from the desert. I'd done like the media and all the big fanfare and everything, and the newspaper articles and the press and the talks to companies, and I was dining out on it, to be honest with you. And there's a funny side of it, which means like I was sort of like walking around like, hey, do you want to hear about my story of the desert? And everyone was kind of like getting a bit bored of it. The slightly darker side of it was I knew I was slipping back into old habits. So I'd gone on this massive 18 months training journey. the preparation that we just talked about, the visualization, the fitness. I was like, zoom, I was on it. I had my goal and I achieved the goal.
Yep.
And I came back with the medal. But then, you know, in those quieter moments, I found myself spending a bit more time on the sofa. I found myself saying, well, you know what? Let's just get a takeaway pizza again this week. I found myself saying, well, you know, it's been a tough Monday. Why not have a bottle of wine and all these sorts of things? And I found like that mental darkness creeping back in.
Yep.
And about that sort of time, I was probably I don't know, I was probably being a bit arrogant with it as well, you know, and saying, so I was saying to my kids one day, I was like, hey, son, you know, are you proud of me? Are you proud of daddy and his desert adventures? And yeah, my son was about 5 at the time, and he was like, nah, not really. And I kind of like spluttered probably on my beer or something. And I was like, what? You know, he's like, oh, I'm just a bit bored, dad, to be honest. And I was like, what? Why? What do you want me to do now? Half jokingly, because he'd got the Guinness Book of Records for Christmas. He was like, I want you to break a Guinness World Record now, daddy. I was like, ah, shit. And I was like, you know, you like tap him on the head and you're like, yeah, okay, off you go. And then the next day it was like, break a world record, daddy, break a world record, daddy. And he's like, oh shit, daddy, when are you going to break a world record, daddy? And I was, oh, bloody hell. So we start, and then, you know, because we lived in Liverpool and it was like a maritime city, and my kids loved fish and sharks, and they were like, be the world's fastest fisherman. So I kind of sent off the application, didn't think anything of it. And then the Guinness Book of Records wrote back, and they were like, well, you know, wrote back. It's not like 1980, the email back.
Yeah.
And they were like, right, you're on. And then they gave me like his 5 pages of rules that you got to follow to the letter. And so I couldn't be a nice chilled out fisherman. I had to be a deadliest catch fisherman. Like
Great.
And they stipulated, yeah, these thick yellow waterproof jacket and trousers, the fisherman's hat. I had to carry a 3-kilo fishing box, and it had to have a 3-kilo weight in it. And of course, I had to wear the bloody rubber welly boots as well.
Strong.
And yeah, and so I found myself on the start line of the Liverpool Marathon, looking like a cross between a serial killer and the world's shittest male stripper, just standing there. And it's funny, I can't describe the feeling of having 20,000 people point at you and laugh at you and tell you you're going to fail. Because again, I was there with all the running types with their lycra and their gels and their, you know, their, like you do on the start line of a marathon. And there's just me with my bloody welly boots and my yellow rubber outfit.
Incredible.
And people were just like, what? I'm not going to do the Liverpool accent, but they were like, what the hell are you doing, lad? And some people found it funny, and like, you know, kids would point and laugh, but everyone would just like, they'd see my boots and they'd be like, you can't run in them. And so I hadn't trained in the outfit either. I was so self-conscious. I hadn't trained in the boots. I hadn't trained in the outfit. I'd gone for a run through my local forest because it was private. I'd done 1 mile, and blessed, there's a little old lady walking her little tiny dog through the forest. And can you imagine if you're an old lady in a secluded forest, and a man comes running towards you, dressed as a yellow fisherman, panting and going, rah! Like the poor girl nearly had a heart attack, and I had to like stop and tell her I wasn't about to murder her or anything. So that's why I hadn't done any training, and then sort of finding myself, and the record was 4 hours 45 minutes to break, and someone had actually broken this record before and set the record. So yeah, having to, but there's so many metaphors there. You know, and everything I do, I talk about. I know I do extreme stuff. I know with the desert and the world record and everything, it's fairly like extreme physical challenges. But everything that I do and I talk about could apply to any situation in life, because most people are too intelligent to do the shit that I sign up for. But you know, in terms of this thing that I wanted to do, I had this goal. I had so many people pointing at me, laughing at me, doubting me, telling me I was going to fail. I was thinking I was going to fail. Like I was on the start line just saying, what the hell am I doing? I could just go home now. Yeah, I could feign an injury. I could just say, hey, you know, whatever, make an excuse and just say, it's not going to happen today. But I had to take that first step. And I took the first step, and I had to take another step and another step. And then after the first mile, I was like, this is going to be a bloody disaster. Halfway through, my toenails fell off. 20 miles in, I just sat on the pavement pretty much and cried, and just like this, I didn't think I was going to make it. And then, but I kept going, and I kept going, and just thinking, just reach that next lamppost, just reach that next lamppost. Even I was so dehydrated because you try running in that outfit, and it's just, you have like the sweat and everything sloshing around, and it's crazy because I thought I couldn't work out my times, but I thought I'd missed the record, and then you're like, oh, I'll just give up because it's not going to work. I'll just, why bother finishing when you know you're going to fail? But I thought I'd keep on doing it, and just as I came around the corner to Liverpool Docks, I saw the finish line, and I was like, oh, maybe I can make it. And but then you get that thing, I don't know if you ever fainted, but kind of like you get the roaring in your ears, and you think you're going to be sick, and your vision goes into like a little tunnel. And I was like, oh shit, I'm gonna just faint spectacularly right by the finish line. And just as I started to collapse and go down, I felt this little thing in the palm of my hand. And I looked down, and my sons had jumped over the barriers, and they were holding my hands, and they were like, come on, daddy. And they dragged me across the finish line. And so yeah, like the crowd goes wild, and I did it in 4 hours 37 minutes. So I broke the record by like 7.5 minutes. So it was close. It was real close. But it was just something, again, to show my kids and to show myself that we can do these fun, crazy challenges, and we can accomplish these goals. And so one thing that really pissed me off, to go back to one of your early questions about, how did I get myself out of these situations, and my kind of aversion to all of the gurus and the motivators out there that can talk a good game. Like, I could sit there and just say, follow your dreams, face your fears, step out of your comfort zone, and I'd be just another armchair expert. But I thought, by doing this, how can I show the world that everyday guys like me can do extraordinary things? And that's why I was saying, it isn't really about fitness. It's not really about extreme adventures or challenges. For me, it's about time. And that's why it goes back to my dad's death, because I was thinking, on that day that my dad died, when he woke up that morning, he didn't know he was going to die that day. And there would have been a moment that afternoon when he thought, oh shit, it's game over. And I always think, what regrets did he have? What thoughts went through his head about, oh, I wish I'd done that. I wish I hadn't done that. Maybe I shouldn't have been an alcoholic for 30 years, but that's another story. And with all these things, I hope he didn't have many regrets, but even if he did, and that's what, for me, so I say, for me, it's not about extreme adventures or being the next David Goggins or anything. For me, it's about time and regret. And that's why I do what I do, to help other people realize that if I can be the guy who was drunk, stressed, depressed, overweight, and run across the Sahara Desert, then why can't someone else start a business? Why can't someone else write a book? Why can't someone else start a podcast? Why can't someone else move to a different country, or start a relationship, or end a relationship, or do any of these things that they want to do, but they doubt their talents, their abilities, their confidence, they're crippled by fear? Because I've been there time and time again when I felt like an imposter, but I still found a way to go and do those things I've always wanted to do. And if I can do that, then I believe that anyone can.
Love that, man. It's so refreshing to hear an honest and vulnerable recount of that journey. And it genuinely gave me chills when you mentioned about coming around and seeing that finish line. And then I absolutely love that it almost went full circle, in that it was kids that started that conversation and joking around with the Guinness World Records. And then ironically, they're the ones then that are there to help you in crossing that finish line, which is amazing. Yeah,
Those kids got a lot to answer for. Next,
yeah,
I need to get them on a PlayStation just to keep them from having any more crazy ideas.
Great. Absolutely great. So, Freddie, you mentioned a little bit that you were essentially in a corporate role, and of course, you mentioned, like, okay, things were going all right, but you knew that you needed to break out of a certain path that you was on. And then I also know that you've gone ahead to become a best-selling author as well.
Yes.
So aside from the physical challenge and things that you were doing, how did you go from essentially being in corporate, and what was that transition like from that to becoming an author?
It's a great question. I mean, from the corporate side of it, it's funny, and I'll try and give you the short version. I mean, like my family came from a slightly dodgy background. I think probably, I know I sound very posh, but it's my dad's dad came from Birmingham, and yeah, he was part of a group of gentlemen that are today known as the Peaky Blinders. So he was like in that whole sort of like that real life community, and he was he was a horse trader, and he dealt with the various gangs and everything else, and they were involved in the black market and all sorts of things, and that's where my dad's side of the family came from. And growing up, it was quite a chaotic upbringing for me. We have one of those sort of quite dodgy lifestyles where one month there was loads of money, and well, not loads of money, we weren't like in Rolls Royces or anything, but my parents would be like, right, we're going on a cruise, or it's holidays, and that, or going out for dinner every night and that sort of thing. The next month, I'd be answering the door to debt collectors while my parents were hid behind the corner because they were like, Freddie, you go and answer the door because they won't come in if there's a child, and those sorts of things. It was a really chaotic upbringing. All I wanted was stability. So, I was the first person in my family to go to university. My mum was my dad's third or fourth wife. I can't remember, but it was that sort of like chaotic time. On my 18th birthday, hopefully I can swear on this podcast, but on my 18th birthday, my dad came in and he was like, "You're a man now, son. So I've got a present for you." And I was like, "Oh, brilliant." It's like, I can be honest and tell you, I'm fucking your mum's best friend. I was like, "Oh, would have preferred a PlayStation, to be honest, but there you
Yeah,
go."
absolutely.
And it was that sort of, so I was like, I want to get out, and all I wanted was stability.
Mhm.
Like, so I was the first person to go to university in my family. I went to uni, had a great time, and then I was like, what do normal people do? Like, they go and get a normal job. So I kind of, yeah, I blagged my way into one of the big corporates and one of the graduate schemes. Went down to the bright lights of London, had a bloody brilliant time. I was like, I get paid, I get like an expense budget. I wasn't very good at the working part of it, but I was great at the socializing, the network part. Um, but then I remember, and pretty like in the first week of my training in this job, I was kind of pulled aside by one of the sort of the senior leaders, and he was like, again, it doesn't really work on a podcast. He did that sort of like that moving around your face, and he was like, like this, and he was like just pointing to all of me. He was like, this, if you want to be successful here, this whole thing isn't going to work. So he was basically saying, like, if you want to make a success of this career, then don't be yourself. Like, all
Wow.
companies these days are like, be authentic, be you, bring your full self to work. And you could argue that they say that on LinkedIn these days. They don't actually believe it in real life. But however it was, this was early 2000s, and they were like, yeah, if you're going to be yourself, you're not going to get on here. And so I said, okay, you're right, I'm wrong. And so I started to become the person they said I should be.
Mm.
I became this kind of diluted version of myself that was always holding something back, that didn't want to be having too much fun, ironically, unless it was in China Whites at 3 o'clock in the morning on a Tuesday or something. But in work, I felt like a massive imposter. Everyone else was like different upbringing, different schools, different ways to network. I was just like, I was blown away by those free coffee in the office, and I didn't know how to play the game. I felt like an imposter. I felt out of place. I worked hard, I played hard, but there was always this feeling that I was not really being myself. And then, as I've learned looking back, when we're not our authentic selves, it's that sort of thing where you try and keep it all in, but then stuff starts to, it's like one of those cartoons, like if you're on on a waterbed or an airbed and it's got holes in, and you kind of like try to spread out and like cover all the holes, and you try and cover one, then water shoots out of another one. And that's why I was partying so hard and drinking so hard, because
Exactly.
I realized that if, yeah, if I was fun Freddie, then my bosses would be like, "Oh, this guy's a legend," and I'd be getting the high fives and everything. And I was like, "Oh, hang on, I'm not very good at my job, but I'm quite good at drinking. And if I could be like the fun guy, the like the office clown, then people like me." But I didn't realize that I was being the entertainer, but I wasn't respected. I wasn't actually, admired for doing a good job. I was just like the kind of like the funny guy. Um, and so yeah, because of that, I was heavily drinking, and we find that in our jobs. Yeah, we all watch the Gary V videos, and we're like, yeah, fuck you, Monday. I'm going to rule this Monday. I'm going to quit my job. And well, I did build up the courage to quit my job, and because I'd be sat in these meetings, just like I wanted to scream. Like I literally just wanted to scream out loud, like I don't care. Like, I just didn't care, and that's nothing against the corporate world, because I saw so many other people around that meeting table, and they loved it,
Yeah.
and they were brilliant at it, and they were talented, and like that, and they really cared. Like, we'd be in the pub and like at 10 o'clock at night, and they'd be doing the work chat thing, and I could see that like they were really passionate, and I was just like, I don't give a shit whether the Bob, the client, how we're going to engage him and build his trust. I was like, well, just. And then I think, yeah, just seeing my dad die like that just blew it out of the water. I was like, I'm watching my dad die, and then other people are like, hey, let's do this account planning. I just like, nah, I'm out. And then I have to be fair and say also, it wasn't it's tempting to be like, yeah, man, screw the suits. But like I say, my attitude wasn't right either. And so I built up the courage. I left the corporate world. I felt the fear and did it anyway. I took the leap. I burnt the boats, left the job. And then for a week, I sat at home and got really scared. And then a recruitment consultant phoned me up, and they said, would you like to do the same job somewhere else for more money? And I said, yes, please. That sounds brilliant. And then you tell yourself, yeah, it'll be different. It's like a relationship. It's like literally like an abusive relationship. So it'll be different this time. I've changed. They've changed. It was probably all my fault. It was all my fault. I got it wrong, but I've learned I can be a better person. Went into that job 6 months later, exactly the same. Getting into trouble, drinking too much, hating I was on a commuter train, just like, it wasn't the way it was supposed to go. So I built up the confidence, built up the energy, handed in the notice. This is it, guys. Same thing. Recruitment consultant phoned me up. Do you want even more money? Yes, I do. I'm going to follow my dream, but I'm going to get some more money. And so I did the whole thing. That time, like literally 2 weeks in, I was like, I've got to stop this. And that's when I realized. So I'd been writing my book kind of, I should probably say, for legal reasons, I was writing my book always out of office hours, obviously. So I was writing my book. I was like, well, let's just try and get some traction with this, because my book was all around thinking, and I call it Starting at Zero, and it's the playbook for making your dreams come true when everything seems fucked. And because I think we're always starting at zero, whether it's a new job, a new relationship, living in a new place, signing up for a race, it always feels like we're starting at zero. So I was like, if only there was a book that would help me when I was starting at zero as an everyday guy who is a bit sick of being literally sat in the corporate motivational talk when I'm just there watching some dude who's ex-army, who's climbed up Mount Everest. And I'm like, well, that all sounds great, mate, but how are you going to help me? Because I've got a hangover and a project deadline and a wife that's pissed off with me and kids that haven't seen me and a growing beer belly. And I loved hearing about your lovely 100 grand climb up Everest, but you're not telling me anything that's actually going to change my life. So it's like, how can I give people real, tactical, tangible advice for everyday guys and everyday women as well, to actually go and get what you want? And that's how the book came out. And once I wrote that, I was like, well, I can't go back now. I can't go back. As tempting as it still is to go back to that full-time corporate job as such. I know that I have to take my own medicine and be like, I can't. If I do that, I will live a life of regret, which is my biggest fear of ever doing that. So I have to now, rightly or wrongly, keep plowing forward and showing people that it can be done.
Love it. It's so interesting to hear the journey. I thank you so much for sharing. I it's really interesting to mention about the corporate and that actually it's a perfect fit for some people because my best friend, he works in a corporate, he's an
Mm,
accountant, absolutely loves really what he does, makes great money, has
mm.
done exceptional in investments, and he's over the moon. It's the perfect fit.
I'm
But it's
jealous of
not for
those
everyone.
people. Like
You know?
I hold no grudges against them. Like
Yeah,
I wish. I sometimes like I wish I was that sort of person. Like, cause life.
yeah,
Sometimes, a lot of my, my in-laws are like that. I've got friends. A lot of my friends are in like London and everything. And like, it's just so nice now. Like, they get into that stage where they're making really good money and they've got their nice, like, their nice perfect life. And I'm like, oh,
but it's
I wish
different.
I could be happy with that. But I know if I went for that, deep down, I'd always have that hole inside me, that I'd probably just fill with all sorts of vices, to be honest, which is not a which is not a good place to be.
So it doesn't apply for everyone, but there is the quote, and I'm going to butcher it, but I think it's something along the lines. Obviously, the salary you're paid is the money you're given to give up on your dreams.
I like that.
So it
Definitely.
doesn't apply for everyone because some people, obviously, the salary can be incredible, but for those that are entrepreneurial, and have these other desires, it stands true. So you mentioned about obviously the book and
Mm.
appreciate you done it all out of office hours, but what was the actual or how what was the method you used to write your book? Did you have a plan? Did you do it all in 1 week? Did you write every day? What was the
No,
structure?
it's a really good question, and it- it- the massive irony is, just like I hadn't ever run across a desert before, and as I hadn't written a book before. So I didn't have a method or a course. I did plan it out. So I was like, if I'm gonna actually write this thing, because again, like, how many of us say, "Well, I'm gonna write a book one day,"
Yeah.
and even the act of writing a book was part of this journey because that's something I've always wanted to do. And we were like, "Yeah, I'm gonna write a book one day," and then another week, and then another month, then another year, and I'd sit down and kind of I'd write a page, then be like, "Ah, stop it, I'm gonna go to the pub or something." So I did set a I thought about the person that I was writing to, and one of my favorite phrases is, "You are best positioned to serve the person that you used to be."
Hmm.
And that's one of my key things. So I was like, who's the person that I used to be? And it was, fairly easy. I was like, how many pissed off, deluded, regret-filled, alcohol-fueled 30-year-olds are there at the moment who Tony Robbins just really hitting the spot for them?
Yeah.
And so I thought about that person, and then I set out my structure, so a number of lessons and chapters, and I tried to intertwine it between like personal stories and actual tactical, tangible advice. Because one of my key things is I don't want to be just a guy who tells you what he did on his holidays. Because there's a danger that you can fall into the trap of like, yeah, this is my tough time in the Sahara Desert, and I found myself, and it was lovely, and it was very tough, and game over. As that's not going to help. So, how can I actually learn? Put these real lessons in there. That isn't just the bullshit kind of face your fears. Let's talk about how to get organized. Let's talk about really how to visualize, not just kind of think positive and write down your goals. How do you actually visualize success? I talk about so many things like, yeah, not just goal setting, but setting bronze, silver, and gold goals, which is, rather than that very simplistic set a goal,
Yeah.
write it down, did I hit it? It's about what happens if something out of my control happens and I actually can't hit my goal. How can I put various controls and measures in place so I don't think of myself as a failure, because I've still hit my silver target on my
Mhm.
bronze target, so I've still won in my head. So all these different things about actual building resilience in the right way, in a way that anyone can. And like I say, this is something that you can use for whether you want to start a business or start a bloody pottery course or climb a mountain or any of those things. And if anything, I'd say it's not for people who are already, the hardcore Iron Man and the ultra runners, because this is for people who are like, I've always wanted to do that thing, but I've never had the guts or the time or the confidence or the opportunity to do it.
Yeah.
Here's how you make it happen. And like I say, I know it works because I've lived it. And then yeah, the act of writing, and I know in the marketing world, it's this whole like, buy my free ebook, and this free ebook's kind of like a 10,000 word. This is like a 80,000 word monster that probably took me, I think, for 18 months again to from like starting my tippy tappy one night to actually then like finding a publisher, and the publisher giving me the editor and the proofreader, and the editor and the proofreader saying this whole thing needs to be taken apart and put back together in a different way, and then all like the proofs and so on. So it's yeah, a cheap ebook it ain't. It's a big old boy. But what I like to think, the lessons and hopefully the humor and the journeys in there, it's for a modern person facing very prehistoric limitations in their lives. I always say, as humans, we're trapped at the moment because we have this weird balance of Stone Age behaviors. We live in quite medieval feudal systems, and we're struggling with godlike technology.
Yeah.
And every day where we're battling these three things of our caveman brains, technology that was on flipping Star Trek 20 years ago in the palm of our hands, in this weird kind of like political societal system at the moment, which is probably a whole other podcast that I won't whole can of worms I won't open on this one. But you know where I'm going, where it's
Things are so
what's
different.
right and what's wrong, and who's offended, and how you can step out of line, and what you can and what you can't say. And we're just trying to, in this weird space, and then you sprinkle a bit of COVID on top and a bit of threat of nuclear war, and you're like, how the hell am I supposed to fulfill my goals and my dreams? Because also I'm trying to be a guy who's a good husband and a good father, and I'm feeling guilty if I turn around to my loved ones and say, I'm going to go for a run now because I've got this goal, or I'm going to go and sit away and work on my business plan now, or I'm going to go and write my book, or I'm just going to go for a walk for me. And it was like, you selfish bastard. And sort of things, this crazy world that we live in. No wonder we feel like we're starting at zero every single day. And hopefully now, we can help more people. Even though we're starting at zero, we can go from 0 to 100 much quicker. Usually because I've made all the mistakes anyway.
That's it. You can fast track someone else's. Someone
Yeah.
else is definitely changing times. So you mentioned that there was no going back to the corporate. So finished corporate, wrote the book. What are you doing now, and what are you focusing on?
It's been a journey. I mean, firstly, I'm living in New Zealand now, which
Slightly
again,
different.
it's slightly different. So I moved from the UK to New Zealand in the middle of COVID. So I've got one again, not a very impressive claim to fame, that I've had full on lockdowns in 2 countries. So I had the delight of the UK lockdown and the delight of a New Zealand lockdown. So again, that was a big step, because I wanted to, again, without getting political, I wanted to experience life outside of Britain. And so many people again came to me and said, oh, I'd love to do that. Oh, I'd love to go and live in a different, oh, New Zealand, lovely. I'd love to go and live in New Zealand. I thought, well, why can't you? I don't have some rich auntie here who flew me over. I moved here, never been here before. I've got zero support network, zero friends. I just literally, me and my family, packed stuff in a suitcase and went.
Wow.
And we made it happen. And so on the back of that, so what I have been doing is trying to build a whole new life out here. But from a business point of view, what I'm doing is that I'm helping businesses and individuals change. And on the back of that, at the highest level, I can work with any business and bring them in generally around $20,000 of additional revenue every single month. And I solve their tricky resource problem and talent shortage problems at the same time. I do that by giving companies and individuals the skill set, the mindset, and the tool set to find hidden revenue in their business. And generally, in my experience, every company is sitting on a gold mine of revenue, and that is either through marketing, through getting their people to work more effectively, by opening up capacity, by helping their people to overcome various mindset blocks and challenges. So I go in and help companies to make more money, market themselves more effectively, and help their employees be the most powerful, high-performing versions of themselves. And we get some great results. So we've seen it in the UK, in the US, and now here in Australia, New Zealand. And I take all of the good stuff that I learned from the corporate world when I worked with the leadership teams of Coca-Cola and Virgin Atlantic and Microsoft and Amazon. I've been on a learning journey myself from a marketing and sales perspective, not just learning marketing, but actually really embracing it, like learning from, I went and trained with Hollywood screenwriters and people from the advertising world, and even worked with people like persuasion artists and illusionists and people like that to really learn about. It's all about what makes us tick as humans. So what makes, and this is why I get fascinated, and this is why I love helping people and businesses. And what, from a psychological point of view, what was it that made me go from couch potato to running across the Sahara Desert? What is it that makes an employee finally say, I'm going to go the extra mile, or I'm actually going to embrace this new computer system, or I'm going to embrace hybrid working? What is it that triggers a leader to finally step up and not want to be liked anymore? How do we work with customers and clients to build real, true loyalty beyond reason? What are those psychological levers that we can pull? And all of this really comes down to, as I say, helping people and businesses to change. And that's why it's all entwined with my personal and my business life. I believe if we can give people the boundaries and the mindsets and the tools to run across a desert or break a record, or, and I say break a record, whether that's a personal record, a revenue record, a profit record, a sales record, it's all about setting and beating goals and doing things that we once thought were impossible. And if I can help everyday people become extraordinary, both at home and at work, then we're all going to win, and we're all going to make the world a better place.
Oh yeah, amazing. It sounds like we got actually a lot in common with actually what we do, which is quite exciting for me. Is it any business that you serve, or is there a specific niche that you lean into?
So funnily enough, I work with a lot of accounting and advisory firms at the moment, and again, it's not the sexiest of niches, but I prefer to not work in the sexy stuff, to actually work where we can make the most difference, where we can help the most people. As I say, it's serving the people that I used to be in. So whilst the whole world is looking at crypto and supplements and fitness and weight loss, I'm like, why play where everyone else is playing? Because there's a massive world out there. Why not go and use my skills and my experiences where people need it? Because as I say, I know a hell of a lot of leaders out there, and I say consulting, advisory, accountancy, but a lot of in the wider space, that's professional services.
Yes,
there's a lot of leaders in professional services firms that are dreading going to work every day because they don't know how to lead. There's a lot of employees that are dreading going to work every day because they don't know how to achieve their goals. There's a lot of customers that are saying, I'd love to give this business money if only they really understood me. And so that's the area that I'm working in. But as I say, from an individual space, I've worked everywhere from retail to consumer goods to tech to finance, oil and gas, and everything. But for now, it's professional services and just helping a lot of people that are really desperate to change, but feel like they don't have the time or the confidence or the capacity to do so.
Love that. And what would the initial process be for anyone that was looking to speak with you, or what does that look like from a business perspective?
So the first thing to do is to go to my website, freddiembennett.com. Get in touch with me that way. I try and give away as much free insight and expertise as I can. So you can sign up for my email list, and there's lots of different resources there.
Brilliant.
But yeah, but get in touch. The first step is that we have a discovery call. Then usually it'd be, if it's a right fit, we do a half-day workshop. Then we go into a number of masterclasses where I really go in there with my clients and get in the trenches with them. Like I say, I've got all these memories of being the random consultant, or sitting there when the random consultant comes in and everyone's just like, sake, I've got a job to do, and who's this guy? So I only work with companies. I've got two rules. I only work with companies when I can actually be there in the trenches with the individuals and the leaders, helping them to change. And the other rule is I don't do any business unless we're both saying hell yes. Because I believe in life, and I've learned this the hard way. Hell yes is okay. Hell no is okay. I don't do hell maybe. And that's why, again, I'd be a richer man if I said yes to more things and to more businesses that say, like, just come and do this, it'll be fine. But unless I'm fully saying hell yes, and the client's saying hell yes, then I'd rather say no, to be honest, because again, with me, all it comes down to is time. And I think life, I've had too many experiences where I've just felt shitty going to work, or like you've got a Zoom call with someone and you're like, oh God, it's them. Oh, and you're not being authentic. You're saying what you think they want to hear. You kind of, in your head, you're saying, don't say yes, don't say yes, don't say yes. And you go, yep, absolutely. Yep, I totally, oh shit, I said it again. It's like, I don't want to, I just don't want to do that anymore. So yes, so that's why I tend to say no to more work than I say yes to. But that's because when I say yes, I want it to be a 100% full on hell yes. And that's where we make amazing stuff happen.
I like that. I love those rules as well. Love those rules.
Mm.
So, Freddie, I've got a final question for you, and this is a question that I ask all of the guests that come on the show. And that question is, what advice would your future self give you in this current moment?
Oh, it's a really good question. And yeah, I think I know the answer to it. So one of my biggest challenges I've always faced, I think, especially since I left the corporate world as well, or maybe it was in the corporate, I've always, or I've too readily attached my horse to other people's wagons. And what I mean by that is I've kind of unintentionally, where you seek out mentors. I had this, you'd find like the wise old boss, and you'd be like, oh great, and I'd be like what's the movie Wall Street, when you got like Michael Douglas and Charlie Sheen, and I'd be like the Charlie Sheen character, probably in more ways than one, but that's one for another day. And I'd be like, attach myself to the old war dog, about, yeah, I'm going to learn from you. But then in the business world, once I've left the corporate world and running my own business, I've entered many different relationships and partnerships that haven't ended well, and I believe that's, whether you're kind of woo-woo or not, but I guess I am a little bit. It's the universe telling me, and this is my future self telling me, you need to do this on your own. And I don't believe in the whole kind of like lone wolf syndrome. I think we absolutely have to collaborate and work with people, and that's where all the magic stuff happens. But in terms of real building business partnerships, I've been too quick to say, oh yeah, let's do that thing, let's do that, and it's generally always gone wrong. And it's gone wrong because I've always allowed other people to overstep my boundaries. You sort of, you partner up with someone and you think, right, I've got this really exciting vision, I'm going to do this, let's do that, and the other person says yeah. And it's like back to that corporate thing, like say the other person says yeah, or how about we do it my way? Yeah. And I've always been like, okay, let's do it your way. And that's when it's always fallen apart. So I think that's what my future self would say to me. Back yourself. You can do this on your own, even though you doubt yourself on a daily basis. You are good enough. You are strong enough. You deserve to be successful, and you can do it your way. You don't have to do it other people's ways. And that's my My constant reminder from my future self to my current self is that life's too short to live someone else's dream.
Amazing. Amazing. Look, it's almost
That's
like
like a virtual mic drop.
yeah, that's it. That's it. Great. This has been incredible. I massively, massively appreciate you and so grateful that you came on the show. And also, you have this incredible way of being vulnerable, but still giving clarity and value. And through the stories and the journey that you've been on, it's amazing to see. Amazing to see. So
Oh,
thank you
pleasure.
so much
Glad
for
you enjoyed it.
the show. We'll definitely have to do this again sometime. And yeah, I can't recommend everyone who's listened to this show, please go check out Freddie and his email list. There's so much value there. And I'm excited for what's to come.
Thank you, man. It's been a real pleasure and an honor to be featured on the show. I'm going to be constantly telling the world about it. And yeah, you are doing some amazing things, and yeah, you inspire me as well. So so thank you so much for having me on, and I'd always make time to come back.
Love it. Awesome. Thank you, Freddie.
Cool. Thank you.
My name is Samuel Main, and I truly hope that you've got value from today's video. If you have, please do hit like and subscribe down below, and I'll see you in the video tomorrow.